4 as a senior in high school. I had to do the math. I apologize for that. The seniors this year, you're probably already hearing how the future is bright and it's yours for the taking. And as you get closer and closer to graduation this spring, you'll hear it more and more. And it'll be faculty, it'll be a favorite teacher, maybe your mom, dad, sister, brother, aunt, uncle. I know by the time I got to May, number 1, I was surprised that I was actually going to be able to graduate. But number 2, it was deafening, it was a little numbing of hearing that your future is bright and it's there for the taking. It really wasn't until I raised my hand and served my country in the United States Navy that I realized that you can do anything you put your mind to. Even better, if you find yourself amongst people and peers and mentors that believe in something greater than themselves and are hardworking and are dedicated, then truly you'll have a bright future. That's what the military did for me, and I urge all of you today to find some way to contribute to something greater than yourselves. One of our members of the high school does that on a daily basis as serving the Troop 165 with the Boy Scouts. We have Gibson Leslie who will provide the posting of the colors for this morning. I would ask that everybody rise, and when we give the command hand salute, to please place your hand over your heart. Please rise. Post the colors. And salute. Let's give it up for the Grand Haven Marching Band who provided the sound this morning, as well as the Chamber Orchestra. Put your hands together for Mr. Hayden Howell.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here today to recognize something that's been part of our country since the beginning. The service and sacrifice of the men and women who protected our country. Veterans Day isn't just a date in the calendar, it's a reminder of people who have dedicated or even given their lives to defend what is so often taken for granted. Veterans Day began after World War I, which officially ended on November 11th, 1918, the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. Veterans Day was originally called Armistice Day because World War I was supposed to be the war to end our wars. Unfortunately, this hope did not come true. As more Americans stepped up to serve in later wars, President Eisenhower changed the name to Veterans Day in 1954. It also became a federal holiday and is now a day to honor all veterans who ever reigned from every era. Veterans are brave men and women who risk their own lives so that we may live free at home. They leave their families, friends, and loved ones to go and fight for our country and our freedoms. Their sacrifices should not go unnoticed, and I'd like to take a moment to recognize them. If you're a veteran who is here today, would you please stand and raise your hands to be acknowledged? Today is about honoring those that have made sacrifices and those that have made the ultimate sacrifice. It's about recognizing the people who stepped up when they were needed. It's about appreciating the quiet heroes who didn't serve for attention but served because they cared about protecting this country when they were in it. Freedom isn't something that just exists on its own. It's something that's been defended time and time again by real people with real lives and real families. To all the veterans who are here today, whether you served decades ago or recently, thank you for your bravery, thank you for your sacrifice, and thank you for helping make this country a place where we can live freely and chase our dreams. To all of you in the audience, if you're planning on joining the military in any capacity after graduation, would you please stand? Thank you for your courage and plan to serve your country. For the rest of our audience members here today, I would encourage you to get involved in supporting our veterans, children, and gratitude. I was one of the students who attended the Veterans Day luncheon in Grand Rapids last spring. The luncheon was a great experience where we got to talk to veterans and active service members. Before the luncheon, there was time to explore the Ford Museum and check out the military vehicles and equipment they had outside. The active members of the military had demos and talk us about their careers and what they did. We then had the honor of listening to Lieutenant Colonel Dan Rimley, who's the founder of Folds of Honor, deliver his keynote address. If you are interested in attending this event in the spring, please reach out to Mr. Durham. Or if you're curious about my own personal experience at the event, feel free to reach out to me. It may seem like a small sacrifice for you to spend your time giving back to people who have given so much to us, but it's important that we continue to honor veterans and tradition. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Isabel Swab. As a junior, I had the privilege of attending the Armed Forces Thanksgiving event representing our school. I was honored to converse with many veterans who shared a variety of experiences and stories. However, I would like to highlight a member of our military who is very special to me and is someone who has shared numerous stories with me. My father, Chaplain Major Nicholas Swab, has served for as long as I've been alive and is still serving today. My father has shared many experiences with me, but today I would like to share one that stood out to me with all of you. During his most recent deployment to Iraq, there was a time when they were forced to take shelter from an overhead rocket attack. During this time, he served as a base chaplain, so when it comes to being with the injured, he was the one the soldiers would go to. However, there is a difference between being with someone who does not know whether they will live or die because it is your job, and doing it out of your own will, knowing it is right. In this moment, my father chose the second option. Knowing there were soldiers injured from the attack, he left his shelter, risked his life in the midst of potential future attacks to be with those men, and gave them a sense of hope in those life-changing moments. He risked his life to be at the bedside of those wounded soldiers, because that is what being a soldier means. Putting your life on the line for the good of those on the battlefield and here at home. My father may not show it, but I know that he could not have had that much courage without fear. However, real courage is doing what is right despite being afraid and despite the possibility of standing alone. From watching my father throughout my life, I can confidently say that whether he is in or out of uniform, in a war zone or at home with us, he lives with that courage every single day. The life of a soldier is not by any means an easy one. They lay their lives down so we don't have to. I am very proud to have watched through the struggles, the triumphs, and the long roads of a soldier firsthand, and I have even more proud to call that man my father, and am forever grateful for his sacrifice, and the sacrifices of every person that makes this selfless decision to fight for every one of us. Thank you, and God bless.
Good historian whose research has led to the awarding of 21 Purple Heart medals to local World War I soldiers over 100 years later. Dr. Peaches was recently recognized with both the Michigan Army National Guard Distinguished Service Medal and Ribbon and the Michigan National Guard Minuteman Award for his work honoring these soldiers. He has written several columns for the Grand Haven Tribune on local World War I service members and was named the Tri-Cities Historical Museum's Historian of the Year in 2023. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Chris Peaches.
That was quite an introduction there. I should have you come to every address that I do. Thank you. Thank you everyone for having me here today. To explain the work that I do, I focus mainly on Grand Haven area, Tri-City area, World War I soldiers who are either wounded in action, they died of wounds received in action, or killed in action. And those are the criteria to receive the Purple Heart Medal. It is the only medal that is automatically awarded. It doesn't require superior's recommendation. If you meet the criteria of those what I just said, you receive the Purple Heart Medal. As you can guess, it's not a medal that many soldiers and military service women and men desire to receive, but they accept it as part of their duty in serving the country. One of the things that I wanted to point out to you before we get into the core of what I wanted to address you with today, the Purple Heart medals, and that is the majority of them graduated from Grand Haven High School over 100 years ago. And one in particular, you may be familiar with the American Legion post in Grand Haven. You drive down Harbor and you start getting into town from this direction. You look over and there's this French-style brown building that's up on a hill, and it's the Charles A. Conklin American Legion post. So Charles Conklin graduated from here in 1914, and he had this incredible eye-hand coordination, and that led him to his all-star baseball player here. And he also designed the yearbook in the year he graduated, 1914. And you can see all these yearbooks. I'm going to do a plug real quick for the Loudon District Library in Grand Haven, but they have that yearbook in their collection there. And so if you get a chance, check out the library down there, and you can see that. Also, the majority of the soldiers who, from this area, the Tri-Cities area, who served during World War I, they belonged to the 126th Regiment, which was the regiment for all of the pretty much West Michigan soldiers, and was part of the famous 32nd Red Arrow Division. This group was the first one that broke through the enemy line back during World War I and opened the path up to the final victory. And the soldiers that were part of that in the beginning were the graduates from Grand Haven High School. So this is clearly one of the greatest high schools in the history of America. I'm just going to get that. I discovered in researching them that the Purple Heart recipients or courage without fear has 5 key ingredients. And so I want to share those with you, what I think they are, and they may apply to you in your own personal life, but something that you can strive for later after you graduate. The first one is faith. When military veterans raised their right hand and pledged to defend our country, they did so without knowing where they would be deployed or what battles they would experience. Each took an oath in faith that the principles and values underlying our U.S. Constitution and the public form of government were not mere words, but they were worth giving their life for every U.S. citizen, no matter who they were, no matter how much money they made, no matter where you stand in the social ranking of things, what religious practice, that they were committed to that. And they agreed to serve faithfully and not just go through the motions. They knew that there would be some that would want the benefits that come from living in our former U.S. constitutional system, but they would do everything that they could to subvert its principles along the way. And so after taking this oath, their oath was tested, and this leads to the second element that I call it's suffering. And suffering is to test one's commitment to their oath, and the Green Haven World War I soldiers experienced this during their training, not only here, but when they're on the battlefield overseas. So, to give you an example, most of them went into training down in Texas, and for whatever reason occurred, they experienced all this unseasonably cold and hot weather. So, at one time, it's snowing, and it's blowing in their tent and covering them in the tent. And some of the soldiers are taking wood and trying to build a fire in their tent. Now you'll notice I don't have intelligence as one of the 5 ingredients. So, setting fire in your tent is, I guess you have to do what you have to do. Also, it froze the pipe, so there's no water. So there's no way to clean, there's no way to boil, there's no way to do any of that stuff. And then, but particularly, suffering really prevailed on the battlefield. And to give you examples, they were constantly on the move and they had to move at night, so they couldn't sleep. There's no sleep at all involved, because if you slept, you couldn't get to your next place. And during the daytime, you would be seen by the enemy. They also had food shortages that were frequent and constant bombardment of artillery and machine gun fire. And the one thing they were really fearful of was chemical gases. You may have heard reading history books that mustard gas was used. The problem with mustard gas is it was so devastating is that it didn't take effect on you until 45 minutes to an hour later. And so, with all of this, and despite their suffering, the soldiers just continue moving forward, determined and committed. And this leads to the third ingredient that I've identified with courage without fear is perseverance. And perseverance is how well you hold up and stand firm and resist temptation to quit under difficult circumstances. So I'm sure you've all been there before. You've been into something and it's not going right or whatever, but you stay with it. And what that does is it leads to your character development, and that's what I consider the fourth element, key ingredient of courage without fear. And so military veterans and active servicemen and women stay strong during challenging times. And what this does is it builds in them a character. So by the time they, for example, World War I got to the final stage of the war, they had persevered through dangerous combat obstacles and hardships, and they all remained obedient to their instructors. They respected their leaders and they respected each other, using the wisdom from their leaders and experience. So by staying faithful to their oath through suffering, military veterans persevered, which in the end builds a strong, mature character. Those of mature character accept suffering as part of the mission, the veterans do, and they learn from it, never doubting, but instead strengthening hope, which is my final fifth ingredient, courage without fear. And for military veterans and active service members, hope is not wishful thinking, but instead the confident expectation and certainty that one is doing what is right for your country out of selfish concern for the well-being of others. And it's to uphold what the English political philosopher John Locke called natural rights. And if you had a civics class, I don't know what it's titled, but it was John Locke that came up with the notion of natural rights, that we have these natural rights when we're born: life, liberty, and does anybody know the third one? Pursuit of happiness. And so, in sum, faith, suffering, perseverance, character, and hope are the key ingredients of courage without fear, and embody what I think are military veterans who selflessly serve their country. And I always end on it's reflected in John 15:13 of the Gospel. It says, "Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friend." So thank you very much for having me here today to share with you this. Again, it's quite an honor to be here at this day before one of the greatest high school student bodies in the history of this country. Thank you.
Our current serving military men and women represent 1% of our nation, and they serve willing to uphold the Constitution to allow for the freedoms that we have today. At this time, we would like anybody in the student body who might have a family or a friend serving in the United States Air Forces, if you could please stand to be recognized. Please thank your family member or friend for their service. Thank you for serving. We are now going to segue to the playing of taps, which Jeremy Thayer is going to conduct. Veterans Day, as we know, is a time in which we remember and honor those living veterans who have and continue to serve. But as with most military traditions, there is a time to pause and to remember those who have gone before us. With that in mind, it is appropriate to take time during the Veterans Day ceremony to remember those like William Zimmerman, a graduate of Grand Haven High School who was killed in the Bay Area attacks in the 1980s, and others who have died, and to also honor those still with us with the sounding of taps. At this time, please rise. Thank you. Please be seated. Great job, Jeremy. And now to introduce our keynote speaker, Mr. Andrew Thornsby.
I got told I was doing this about 10 minutes ago, so bear with me. Our keynote speaker today is my dad, Colonel Michael Thorsby. After graduating from Central Michigan in 1981, he was commissioned as a second lieutenant, and then retired after serving for more than 30 years as a Marine Corps officer in both active and reserve commands. In 2004, he was assigned as the commander of Al-Assad Air Base in the Al-Admar province of Western Iraq. So that was home to more than 8,500 Marines, sailors, soldiers, and airmen, 800 civilian contractors, and 1,400 local Iraqis that lived and worked on base. After returning home, he became the Deputy Chief of Staff for the 4th Marine Air Wing, Marine Forces Reserve in New Orleans, Louisiana, and after more than 30 years of service, he retired in July 2011. He and my mom have been married for 42 years, and they have 3 sons, 2 of which are better than me, and 3 daughters-in-law, and then 3 grandchildren as well. So, please welcome my dad, Colonel Michael Thorsby.
All right, can you hear me? Good morning, Grand Haven. How are you? Yes. Let's get this party started. We heard about courage under fire and the loss of many of our Grand Haven alum. So why, I pose a question, why does anyone sign up for military service? Military life is hard. It's stressful for both the military member and his family, or her family. As an example, when I was stationed at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, one Sunday morning, my wife and I were in bed. The phone rings at 6:30. Now, who the heck calls at 6:30 any morning, let alone Sunday? I answered it. The voice on the other end says, "Sir, this is the Sergeant of the Guard, and you have a base recall." Sorry, sir. Hung up. Those two words, base recall. That was code telling me I had to get into the headquarters building immediately. Recall meant bring all your gear. You're going away somewhere. Within 18 hours of that phone call, I was standing in the Middle East, along with 350 other Marines. Chris had mentioned alum, Lieutenant Zimmerman. He was among the bodies that I helped recover in Beirut that morning, as he was killed in the bomb blast. So, many times throughout the years, I saw a lot of hardship. I had a lot of rough living conditions, saw a lot of blood, saw a lot of death. Why then would anyone in their right mind sign up for military service? I served in the Marine Corps for 30 years. So let me share with you why I joined. See, my mother was born and raised in Budapest, Hungary. I grew up here in Michigan, born in Michigan, but I grew up as a child visiting Hungary, because that's where we'd have to go to see our grandparents, aunts and uncles, extended family, and so forth. Now, that's nothing too unusual. You all do that. You travel to see your extended family, wherever they may be. However, back when I was a kid, and going to Hungary, and those nations were part of the Warsaw Pact, they were all occupied by the Soviet Union, the Russians of the Soviet Union. See, the Cold War was in full effect, and the Berlin Wall was a very real thing. What I'm going to share with you is not something I read, not something I saw on social media, it's things I lived. I arrived in Budapest by plane. As you do that, passengers were greeted with soldiers armed with submachine guns. They ensured that you got off the plane, went through customs and immigrations, and out of the airport. Now, were they there for my protection? Certainly not. Were they there to make sure I wasn't sneaking around the airport? Their primary purpose was to keep Hungarians from boarding the plane and flying away. My suitcases, they were thoroughly searched for contraband, but they weren't looking for drugs. They were actually searching for guns, newspapers, books from the West, Bibles. See, these items, no Hungarian was allowed to have them. And the Soviets controlled all aspects of the Hungarian life. Now Budapest, a city of 2.5 million people, imagine, huge, 2.5 million people. Well, lots and lots of beautiful buildings and churches so huge, cathedrals. Anything here would pale to them. But those churches were only allowed to hold one and only one service per week. That had to be Sunday morning. It had to be Sunday because that was the people's day of rest, because church could not interfere with the work week. There was no Sunday school, no church youth groups, no Bible studies. There was no freedom of religion. Sports, we called out sports. Budapest is such a large city. Imagine how many high schools they have. And they have all the sports teams. Soccer, of course they call it football. And basketball, water polo, swimming, track and field. However, this is key, however, there were no spectators at any of those games. No cheerleaders, no marching band, no pep rallies beforehand. Why? Because there was no freedom of assembly. You couldn't have a crowd gathered around. And Budapest, being a large city, had 2 TV channels. Imagine as a kid, you had 2 TV channels. One was news, another was political. That was lousy. And there were 3 radio stations. All were government run, government controlled. All content was pre-screened to ensure stories supported the government ideas and policies. Absolutely no news from the USA or shows or from Western Europe. Nothing was broadcast that covered the American way of life. There was no freedom of speech. That's my cue to hurry this thing up because I guess there's only one thing between you and lunch, and that's me. So when I went back to America, I felt wonderful. There was television, wonderful television, and radio stations. I could listen to rock and roll. And Detroit stations, I know country western, some people like it. I know. I was more of a soul person. But, and then newspapers and books to read. Why then? I asked myself, why then would the Hungarian people live under such conditions? Why would my relatives tolerate such oppression? Surely they didn't enjoy this life. Less than 2% of the Hungarians were members of the Communist Party. Yet year after year, election after election, the People's Party, the Communists, they won. You see, the ballots all were stuffed. Only enlisted party members could be the ones that voted on. Well, after many, many trips to Hungary through the years as growing up, I discovered why they lived that way. I discovered what separated their lifestyle from ours, yours and mine. Why we had the power to make so many decisions and they didn't. And you know, I brought that power here with me today. Think of it, the power that holds and allows you to attend all the football games, rallies, basketball, water polo matches. The power that allows you to listen to anything on TV, radio, newspapers. You can voice your own ideas. Power that allows you to choose the classes and career paths that you want. Power to bow your head, bend the knee, or get down on hands and knees and pray to God the way you believe, how you should pray, and when you should pray and worship God. That power is here. It's the Constitution of the United States of America. These flimsy pages, these flimsy sheets of paper, gives all of us who are gathered here today the power to gather here today. It's in you. But here's the downside. Though these sheets of paper may hold all power, they're fragile. So very fragile. I want to close with this. Every veteran that you know, family member, every soldier, sailor, airman, Coast Guardsman, or Marine in military service today or in the past, they took an oath. An oath that says, I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign or domestic, so help me God. Now, an oath to a piece of paper, not the president, not the flag, or an oath to a political party, not even to a school, no matter how you feel this, but an oath to an idea on a piece of paper. Yeah, an oath unlike any other country has in the world. Any other country has in the world. This is it. They don't have it. So take the time. Consider its importance. Look at it. I'm not a recruiter. I'm not suggesting that you must serve the military. You do it because it's in your heart. It's in your heart. If you want to and you can, then great, join us. But if not, then at least do your part to protect the Constitution with your vote, your involvement, your support. Now, most of you can't vote. I realize that I'm an old guy, but I'm not that old. But soon you will. So please be knowledgeable, learn the issues that face our nation, its relations with other nations, and how it can support your freedoms. Okay, I'm done. Thank you.